Marasara! I'm so happy you're here. You're listening to the My Felt Story podcast, your place for Torah stories. From Avraham Avinu to Moshe Rabbeinu, we learn how to love and serve Hashem and how to be kind to our fellow friends. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The story of the king and the prince. Once upon a time, there lived a king in a big, beautiful palace. The king had an only son whom he loved with all his heart. He wanted the prince to have the best teachers so he could learn and become very wise. The king and the prince decided it would be a good idea to travel to a faraway land to learn the wisdom and ways of the people that lived there. The king gave the prince a large amount of gold and silver coins for his trip. The king would miss his only son, but he sent him on the trip, hoping that the prince would gain knowledge and wisdom that he couldn't get from staying in the palace. The prince took his bags filled with gold and silver, dressed in his royal clothing, and went on his way. The prince used the money his father gave him for all the interesting things he saw on the way. He made new friends in faraway lands and tried out all the fun things that they did. He learned the language that they spoke and decided he didn't need his royal clothing anymore. He bought clothing so he could look like everyone else. The prince was enjoying his time away from the palace. He was enjoying his new friends and all the new experiences. He forgot about his father and the palace and his old life. Until one day, when he was out and about with his friends, he put his hand in his pocket to reach for a coin. And to his dismay, there wasn't any left. He dug around in his money pouch, but it was completely empty. Oh no! What am I going to do? How will I survive? The prince was far away from the palace, where the people never even heard of his father, the king. He felt alone and sad. All he wanted to do was go back home. He missed his father and the palace. It took a long time for the prince to make his way back to the city where the palace was. He felt happy to see the familiar roads that led back to the palace. He finally arrived at the palace gates and felt excited to see his father, the king. It had been such a long time since he left. But the guards at the gate wouldn't let him in. "Sorry, sir, we don't let regular citizens inside the palace without an appointment." The prince was shocked. "But I am the prince," he shouted at the guard. "Look, it's me. You don't recognize me?" "Sorry, sir, you don't look like the prince," said the guards. "The prince wears royal clothing, not ripped-up streetwear." The prince looked down at his clothing. They were not the beautiful robes he wore when he left the palace, and even his language was different. There was nothing that the guard could recognize about him. The prince felt his heart squeeze in pain. He felt a deep sadness come into his being, and out of his mouth came a loud cry. The prince had nothing left to do. He stood there sobbing. He felt so alone and lost. Inside the palace, the king heard a familiar sound. Wait, what was that? It was a crying sound, and it sounded like the prince. "He's home!" cried the king. Filled with delight and excitement to see his only son, the king rushed outside, ran down the windy path of the palace garden, opened the gate, and gave his son a giant big hug. "You're home! I missed you! I'm so glad to have you back. Come inside and let's talk about your trip." The king took his son's hand and led him back inside the palace. The prince cried happy tears. His heart swelled with joy and relief. He was so happy to be home with his father. Do you know, dear children, that this story is a mashal, an example for how Hashem loves us. Hashem is the King, and we are His only child. When we come down to this earth, we leave the safety and comfort of the palace of being close to Hashem. And sometimes we can forget how much Hashem loves us and also forget how to be close to Hashem. After a while, we start to feel so far away and so sad, and then we really want to come back and be close to Hashem. But maybe we don't know how. Maybe we don't have the right words and we don't know how to be close to Hashem. We feel so lost. All we have left is our cry, the cry of the shofar, which sounds like a person crying. It tells Hashem that we want to come back to the palace and be with Hashem once again. And that's it for today, friends. I hope you enjoyed the story. Sending you lots of love until next time.